My name is Sarah Monroe. To the United States Army, I am a Major General, a 2-star commander with authority over strategic operations in the Indo-Pacific theater. But if you ask my family, I'm just Sarah, the one who joined the Army because she couldn't figure out what to do with her life, the one who drives a 4-year-old sedan, wears department store shoes, and probably spends her days stamping forms in a dusty office. My aunt once told a group of her brunch friends that I work in government support. She said it with a sympathetic tilt of her head, the kind you save for a relative who is recovering from a mild illness. It gives her structure, she added. Sarah always needed that. I was standing right there when she said it. I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her that 12 hours earlier, I had been on a secure video conference with the Secretary of Defense, outlining the risk assessment for a naval blockade. That's the thing about being in uniform. Unless you wear it in front of them, they don't see it. And even when you do, if they don't understand the language of rank, they just see a costume. My family has always seen me as the outlier. I didn't marry young. I didn't buy a sprawling home in the suburbs with a 2-story foyer. I didn't post perfectly curated photos of artisanal lattes or beach vacations on Instagram. They created a whole story about me, one that made sense to them. I was the black sheep, the spinster, the one who settled for a government paycheck because she lacked the ambition to make it in the corporate world. I never corrected them. I figured if they needed to believe I was some harmless, aimless soldier to sleep better at night, let them. But I never forgot how it felt to be talked down to at family dinners. To sit there in silence while my cousin, who sells luxury real estate, asked if I'd ever considered a real career. They never asked what I actually did. Not really, because they thought they already knew. To my family, I was always just Sarah, the one who skipped the sorority, joined the Army, and never quite made it out of that phase. They didn't picture strategy briefings or intelligence summaries. They pictured dusty boots and bunk inspections. It didn't matter that I had served on 3 continents, led multinational task forces, and made decisions that shifted foreign policy outcomes. None of that showed up in the way I dressed or the car I drove when I came home on leave. They judged what they could see, and what they saw didn't impress them. My uncle made jokes about military pensions, like I was scraping by on scraps. My aunt would lean in and whisper things like, "At least you're not in any danger, right? They don't send women to the front, do they?" I would smile and say, "No, Aunt Brenda, I'm very safe." I didn't tell her about the time my convoy was hit by an IED in Syria. I didn't tell her about the nights in the command center when we watched the drone feeds, holding our breath as our teams breached a compound. They didn't see the reports I signed off on. They didn't see the soldiers I mentored or the decisions that kept people alive. They just saw a woman in off-the-rack clothes who never talked about work. And I let them. In their eyes, I had settled. Settled for a job without luxury, for a life without sparkle. Meanwhile, I had a clearer purpose and more control than anyone at that dinner table. They bought into a fantasy where success wore a Rolex and drove a Tesla. My silence let them keep believing it. And maybe that was my fault. But in the end, the silence was easier than trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I didn't have any. I was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant when I was 22. I still remember the weight of that first salute. I worked my way up. Platoon leader, company commander, battalion executive officer. I deployed twice to Iraq and once to Afghanistan before I turned 35. I learned how to brief generals, how to read a room, how to lead when you're scared out of your mind but can't show it. I earned every stripe, every bar, every oak leaf. Somewhere along the way, my job stopped being tactical and started being strategic. I went to the War College. I earned a master's degree in international relations. I learned to speak fluently in acronyms, timelines, and contingency plans. At 39, I made Brigadier General, 1 star. At 43, I pinned on my 2nd star, Major General. I was sitting in rooms with Joint Chiefs and foreign ministers, drawing lines on maps that shaped global policy. And through it all, my family still thought I was just doing Army stuff. When I tried to tell my mother about my promotion to general, she was distracted by my sister's kitchen renovation. "That's nice, honey," she said. "Does that mean you get a raise? Maybe you can finally get a new car?" It wasn't that I didn't want them to know. It was that they didn't want to hear it. To them, military life was small, rigid, something you did when other doors didn't open. My silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline. It was the discipline of knowing when not to speak, of understanding that if someone's not really listening, it's not worth the breath. So I gave them silence, not because I had nothing to say, but because they never really asked. The invitation came in a thick white envelope with gold trim. My mother forwarded it to me like it was a royal decree. "You have to come," she said over the phone. "It's Brenda's 60th birthday. A formal dinner at the Meridian. The whole family will be there." I was weeks into my new post at the Pentagon as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. I was barely sleeping. My days were filled with long-range planning meetings and classified briefings that never left the room. But none of that mattered to my mother. "You're in DC now," she argued. "Charlotte is a short flight, or a drive. This is the first time in years you'll be close enough to show up." I heard what she wasn't saying. Show up for once. Prove you still belong to this family. I didn't want to go. Aunt Brenda had always made it clear she thought I was a disappointment dressed in camouflage. She was the one who made the cheap seats jokes. But guilt is its own kind of pressure. "Please, Sarah," my mom said. It would mean something to me. So I nodded at the phone, said I'd try. I marked the day on my calendar. I told my aide-de-camp, Major Vance, to clear my schedule for that evening if possible. Major Vance looked at me with concern. "Ma'am, with the situation developing in the South China Sea, are you sure you want to be out of the pocket?" "I'll have my secure comms, Major," I said. "It's just a dinner. I need to do this." I told myself I could drive down, make an appearance, eat the cake, and be back in DC before the midnight shift change. But the truth was, I already knew. I knew this wouldn't be just another family dinner. Something about this one felt heavier, like the past and the present were heading for a collision. The day of the party, I laid a simple black dress out on the bed of my hotel room in Charlotte. It was understated. Nothing flashy, just enough to blend in. I was reaching for the zipper when my secure cell phone, the one that bypasses all networks, rang. The ringtone was distinctive, a sharp digital warble. I answered immediately. "Monroe." "General." Major Vance's voice was crisp, urgent. "We have a situation report. Pacific Command just flagged a massive, unplanned naval exercise by opposing forces near the strait. The threat level has been elevated to Charlie." I felt the shift immediately. My body snapped into readiness. The fatigue vanished. "How soon is the briefing?" I asked. "The chairman of the Joint Chiefs is convening a secure video teleconference in 45 minutes, ma'am. He requested you specifically. We need your assessment on the logistical choke points." I looked at the black dress on the bed. Then I looked at the clock. I was 45 minutes away from a secure military facility at Fort Liberty, formerly Bragg. If I drove fast, I could make it to the briefing room there. But the dinner was in 30 minutes. "Ma'am," Vance continued, "I have a heliborne extraction team on standby, But the weather is grounding the birds in D.C. I've routed a ground convoy to your location. They are 5 minutes out. A convoy? Yes, General. 2 SUVs and a security detail. We need to get you to the nearest SF immediately. The one at the Federal Building downtown is closer than Liberty. Understood, I said. Divert the convoy to the Meridian Hotel. I have to make one stop. Ma'am? My mother is at that hotel, Major. I promised her I'd show up. I'll do the briefing from the road if I have to, but I am walking into that party, saying hello, and then leaving. Copy that, General. Convoy is en route to the Meridian. ETA 10 mics. I hung up. I looked at the black dress. I threw it back in the suitcase. I reached for the garment bag I always traveled with, the one that held my Army service uniform, the dress blues. I didn't have time to be Sarah the civilian. I was General Monroe now. I pulled on the trousers with the gold stripe down the leg. I buttoned the crisp white shirt. I tied the black tab tie. Then, the jacket. Midnight blue, heavy with the weight of my service. I pinned on my rack rows of colorful ribbons that told the story of 20 years of war. The Bronze Star, the Legion of Merit, the Defense Superior Service Medal, and finally, on the shoulders, 2 silver stars. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the black sheep. I saw a Major General of the United States Army. I slicked my hair back into a tight regulation bun. I put on my service cap. I grabbed my secure tablet and walked out the door. I arrived at the Meridian just as the sun was setting. I didn't arrive in my Honda. 2 black armored SUVs screeched to a halt under the hotel's portico. The lead vehicle's door opened and a soldier stepped out. Not a valet. A soldier in full dress uniform. It was Major Vance. He had flown down ahead of me to prep the site. He opened my door. He snapped a salute. "General," he said, "we have a secure room prepped in the back of the hotel for the conference call, but we're tight on time." "I need 5 minutes, Major," I said. "Yes, ma'am. Security detail is with you." I stepped out of the SUV. 2 large men in suits with earpieces, diplomatic security service, flanked me immediately. We walked into the lobby. The hotel staff stopped and stared. A general walking with a security detail isn't something you see every day. The manager rushed over, looking terrified. "General," he stammered, "how can we help you?" "I'm here for the private party in the ballroom," I said, not stopping. "Brenda's 60th. I walked toward the double doors of the ballroom. Major Vance walked 1 step behind me to my left, carrying the football, the secure briefcase. The security agents walked ahead, clearing the path. Inside the ballroom, the party was in full swing. Jazz music, clinking glasses, laughter. I walked in. The room didn't notice me at first, but then the ripple effect started. People near the door stopped talking. They turned. They stared. They saw the uniform, the medals, the stars. The silence spread across the room like a wave until the only sound was the jazz band, which awkwardly trailed off into silence. I saw my family at the center table. Brenda was holding a glass of champagne, laughing at something my cousin had said. My mother was next to her. Brenda looked up. She saw me. Her smile faltered. She blinked, confused. She looked at the uniform like it was a costume. "Sarah?" she called out. Her voice was shrill in the quiet room. I walked toward them. My heels clicked on the marble floor. Major Vance and the agents shadowed me perfectly. Brenda let out a short, uncomfortable laugh. "You didn't change? I mean, it's a formal event, Sarah. You couldn't find a nice dress?" I stopped 10 feet from the table. "There wasn't time, Aunt Brenda," I said. My voice was calm, projecting to the back of the room. She looked me up and down, her eyes pausing on the medals, then dismissing them. She turned to the rest of the table, rolling her eyes. "Well," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just find a seat in the back, honey. We put you at the kids' table. You're used to the cheap seats, right?" The words hung in the air. Cruel, dismissive. The same old punchline. My mother froze. My cousins looked away, embarrassed. I didn't say a word. Years in command had taught me how to hold posture in moments worse than this, but this time, I wasn't alone. Major Vance stepped forward. He didn't look at Brenda with anger. He looked at her with the cold, professional correction of an officer addressing an unruly civilian. "Ma'am," Vance said, his voice cutting through the room, "you are addressing Major General Monroe, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations." Brenda blinked. "What?" Vance continued, his tone turning razor sharp. "General Monroe commands 40,000 troops and oversees strategic assets for the entire Pacific Theater. She is not sitting at the kids' table." The silence that followed was absolute. Brenda's glass tilted in her hand. Wine sloshed onto the tablecloth. My mother stood up slowly. She looked at me. She looked at the stars on my shoulders. She looked at the soldiers flanking me. "General?" my mother whispered. "Sarah, you're a general?" "Yes, Mom," I said gently. "For 4 years." "We didn't know," my uncle stammered. "You didn't ask," I said. Before anyone could say another word, the secure phone in Major Vance's hand buzzed. A red light flashed. Vance looked at the phone, then at me. "General," Vance said urgently, "the chairman is on the line. The situation is escalated. We need your authorization for the fleet movement immediately." The room heard it. The chairman. Fleet movement. I looked at Brenda. She looked small now. The arrogance had drained out of her face, replaced by shock and fear. I looked at my mother. She was crying, not out of sadness, but out of realization. She finally saw me. I turned to Vance. "Patch it through." Vance handed me the secure handset. "Monroe here," I said into the phone. The entire room watched, mesmerized. "Sarah, we have a go on the blockade." The chairman's voice crackled in my ear. "We need you to sign off on the rules of engagement for the 7th Fleet." "Understood, Mr. Chairman," I said. "I am authorizing the movement of Carrier Group 5 to the forward position. Rules of engagement are defensive only unless fired upon. I will be at the secure site in 20 minutes to take command." "Copy that, General." I handed the phone back to Vance. "We need to move, General," Vance said. "The motorcade is waiting." I looked back at my family. Brenda was pale. My cousin, the one who asked if I was ambitious enough, looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. My mother walked up to me. She reached out and touched the fabric of my uniform sleeve, as if testing if it was real. "You run the fleet?" she whispered. "I help guide it, Mom," I said. "I'm sorry," she said, tears spilling over. We thought you were lost." "I was never lost, Mom," I said. "I was just leading the way." I stepped back. "I have to go," I said to the room. "Duty calls." I turned around. Major Vance shouted, "Make a hole!" The security agents cleared a path through the stunned guests. I walked out of the ballroom, head high, the weight of the stars on my shoulders feeling lighter than they ever had. Outside, the motorcade was idling. Blue lights flashed against the hotel walls. Police motorcycles had blocked off the street to escort us. I climbed into the back of the armored SUV. Major Vance got in the front. "To the airfield, Major," I said. "We have a long night ahead of us." "Yes, ma'am." As the convoy peeled away, sirens wailing, I looked back at the hotel entrance. I saw my family standing there, huddled in the doorway, watching the lights fade into the distance. They finally saw me. Not as the black sheep, not as the disappointment, but as the general. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. I had a job to do. I opened my laptop, connected to the satellite uplink, and went to work.